Welcome to Sidewalk Talk. I'm Steve Fortunato, founder of Shovel the Sidewalk. We're a marketing firm in Buffalo, New York for small businesses. We help create advertising through the authenticity of storytelling. And that's what Sidewalk Talk is all about. We find thought leaders with Western New York connections. We discover their stories. We find out their successes, their failures, and we hope that you can learn from them. And today we are so happy to have with us Dr. Siobhan Budwey. So Doc grew up in Western New York. She abandoned ship. She lives somewhere else now. We'll talk about that in a second. She is in town for a celebration. That's something that we'll talk about in a little bit as well. But Doc, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, she's also my sister-in-law and the mother-in-law. No, you would be the godmother of my firstborn. So your sister-in-law. Yeah, you're my sister-in-law and the godmother to Ellie. Yes. So that being said, you're also Frank Budwey's daughter.
I am.
So let's talk about
Big
that.
shoes to fill.
So what was that like growing up as Frank Budwey's daughter? So now it's, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people in NT.
I felt like a celebrity sometimes.
Did you?
In NT, yeah.
Yeah. People feel like they know you, right?
Yes.
Like
yes.
Maybe they don't know you.
Yeah, yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right, so let's get to it.
Okay.
Right, so you grow up out here in NT.
In North Tonawanda, born and raised.
All right, and on the Sacred Heart.
High school,
right, Sacred Heart. How'd that go?
It was actually, it was a good experience. I didn't love going to an all-girl Catholic school. And I think I would have had some different experiences going to public school. I didn't really always feel like I fit in at Sacred Heart. I was definitely one of the outcasts. I wasn't one of the cool kids. And I wasn't a jock. Went through a gothic period. So I kind of stuck out with my group of friends. But overall, it was a good experience.
In the end, when all three of my sisters went to Sacred Heart.
Yeah.
In the end, and there were the positives and the negatives.
Yeah.
Now, all these years later, you look back and you think it helped shape you the way you are today, just whether the positives or the negatives.
Yes, I absolutely. Yeah.
So, all right. So then you go away to school in
Fredonia. So I started. I did my
graduate was okay. So
I graduated from Sacred Heart. I went over to SUNY Fredonia, and at first, when I got there, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do as a major. I had an idea that I might want to do psychology because I had taken a psychology and a sociology class in high school, which was great. That was one of the things I loved. Yeah. But I think at 18, I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm ready to commit to something like that's like the rest of my life. But I sat down with somebody and they said, well, just like if you're kind of feeling like psychology, go with psychology. You can always switch it later, but we need you to have something. So I did. And actually, I think it was my sophomore or junior year of college where I was like, well, I kind of like social work. I felt like social work did more helping and that I definitely wanted to be a helper. So I got into that. I learned a lot. I'm glad I did that route. But in the end, I still love psychology. And one of my relatives actually convinced me, like, you're gonna make more doing psychology. You're gonna be able to do the same work and the same kind of work, but you're gonna be appreciated more and you're gonna be valued more and paid more. So I was like, okay.
You beat me too. I was gonna say, because I do know you. Maybe I know you better than most of the guests we have on our show. But we recently went through our personality tests in our company.
Oh, interesting.
Siobhan or Dr. Budwey would be, what was the number 2? You would be in the helper category. I
have to do this test.
I know where you're going to land. Siobhan wants to help everybody.
Yeah.
You've always been that. No matter what's going on, you want to help people. And that's probably why you landed in the perfect spot in
Right.
your area of profession, which is you're a psychologist,
Right.
So,
Yeah.
all right, so you go to Fredonia, and then you say, all right, I want to learn, I want to further that education. That's
Right.
when you went to New Orleans, or how?
Yeah, so toward the end of my senior year, I had to make some decisions. I did have to take the GRE. It's a test to get into graduate school. And I knew I had to keep going, because as a psychologist, you can't do much with a bachelor's.
Mm-hmm.
So I took the GRE. I'm not that great at that. So because a lot of the schools base acceptance into the school on the GREs, I wasn't going to get anywhere far. So I talked to my advisors, and they said, well, go ahead and don't go right on to the doctoral. Go to a master's program, but go to a master's program that's not a terminal master's program. Because that way you're going to show that you can do graduate level work, and the GRE won't count as much. And then you can go ahead and apply for the postdoc. Or not for the postdoc, I'm sorry, for the doctoral program.
Okay.
And so
that's why.
So then I applied to several schools. I got accepted to a couple, but my first choice was Southeastern Louisiana University in Hammond, Louisiana, because I had family down there, and I absolutely loved the culture, New Orleans culture. Yeah. So I wanted to go experience that and get out of Buffalo, maybe have not so many harsh winters, but trade that in for hurricanes. So
and 90-degree humidity.
Yeah. That was okay.
So you did that, then you came back to Buffalo, but that was temporary, and you went out to San Francisco.
Right.
So,
Palo Alto technically.
Okay.
But Bay Area,
okay.
yeah.
And what was that for?
And that was my doctoral program.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
At what school?
So that was when I first started. It was called the Pacific Graduate School of Psychology in Palo Alto. That program, while I was there, grew to include a bachelor's and a terminal master's, and it just grew. And so they changed the name to Palo Alto University.
All right.
So yeah.
So do you think for anyone out there, maybe a parent whose child has that type of personality that you have, where they really want to help. I mean, they want to help the world, all right? And that's what you want to do. You want to help every animal. It doesn't, an ant and to a human, okay? You want to help them. But probably this would be the right kind of field for someone that wants to help.
I think there's lots of different fields that folks can go into that want to help. The one big thing that you have to consider is, how does your child do in school? Do they want to be in school for a while?
Yeah, it's a lot of school. It's a lot of money.
Yes, and it's a lot of money, yeah. And so when I have clients that I work with who are teenagers and they're starting to think about, well, what do I want to do? I think I want to get into this. And sometimes they'll ask, well, how long were you in school? And I tell them I had 12 years of college. My route, it doesn't have to be that long, but my route was, and they're like, oh, okay.
That's a long time.
So, but there's lots of different, because you can do a terminal master's program. So you would do your 4 years bachelor's in about 2 to 3 years and a master's, and you can still do therapy. You can still do counseling services and be helpful. But being a psychologist, you get to do some different things.
All right, so now you've got all these degrees and stuff, and you end up, so you cannot be farther away in the continental United States than where you are now, right?
Well, Alaska or Hawaii.
That's not the continent.
Oh,
so they're not attached.
Right. Alaska is.
Okay. So you're gonna go to Alaska. So you're out in the state of Washington, in Olympia, Seattle, south of Seattle.
South of Seattle, close to Portland, Oregon.
So I mean, why? Why there?
So when I went out to the West Coast for graduate school, my intention was always to come back to this area, or at least be closer to home. But I went out there, I did my program, I met my now wife, and
who's also a doctor.
She's a forensic psychologist.
Which is pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. So we met, and her postdoc took us to Houston, Texas, and then, her internship took us to Houston, Texas, and I had already done my internship.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and then she applied to different postdoctoral places, and we landed in Washington State. She had some family there, so that was nice that we were close to some family. And when we got there, I fell in love. And I fell in love with it because it actually reminded me of home, because we have the 4 seasons. The leaves change. We have a spring where things bloom and it's beautiful. We do have winters, but they're so mild. And so the temperatures don't get as cold. Yeah, it does not rain all the time, by the way. We do have more cloud cover most of the year, but we have beautiful summers. There's so much you can do outside, which I love to be outside. My wife loves skiing. I've rekindled that love, and we'll go every once in a while. We love hiking and being on the water, and it's just absolutely beautiful. So we went out there for her work, then I found some work, and we just kind of fell in love. So.
All right. So, and you were working as a psychologist for a practice, right?
For a group practice, yes. When we first moved to Washington, I got licensed, and then I joined the group practice, yeah.
So, and then you took the leap.
And I took the leap.
Right, and I think that this helps. A lot of people want to know what that's like. What did you, what did we learn from that? There's a lot you don't know it until you do it.
Yeah.
It's a big risk, and it's very scary, and I know you're doing well, and that's great.
Yeah.
But how do you advise people? Should others in that situation go ahead and take that leap?
So I think, it's individual. A lot of people that I have met along the way have said, oh no, I can't, I want to know I'm having my paycheck. I want to know I have that security, that stability. I want to know that I can earn time off. I'm going to have a paid vacation. I have my benefits. So those are all the things that if somebody is like, no, I like that stability. I want that security. I would say private practice is maybe not the way to go. So unfortunately, in my group practice that I was with the other folks, they didn't really offer a lot. They were taking 50% of what I was bringing in for them. And they did offer admin assistance, which was super helpful. So they would call clients, make sure they were paying their bills, do all the billing for me, which is huge, which is great. Do all the filing and like get me new clients. But I didn't feel that it was worth 50% of what I was bringing in. And with the technology for mental health right now, there's a lot of programs out there where they do your billing. It's really simple to get your billing set up. So I had a colleague who actually went out before me on her own. And so that was super helpful to have somebody that I knew has gone through it. She kind of figured it out, and she offered to help and say, okay, so first you need to do this, and next you need to do this. So having somebody kind of guide me was helpful. There are a lot of resources out there too that you could get that kind of direct you into how to build your own private practice, but having somebody that I knew and I trusted was helpful. For my line of business, I work with insurance companies, and you don't have to, but it is super hard. I don't know how anyone can really afford to pay out of pocket for therapy or for psychological evaluations, but they do sometimes. But because I'm a helper, because I love to help, I knew I had to be on insurance panels in order to be able to help the people I wanted to help. So getting on those insurance panels wasn't so hard because I was actually already paneled under a different tax ID number with the group. So that wasn't so hard. And I did decide the group practice did not take Medicaid. But I decided I wanted to take Medicaid because I wanted to help the most vulnerable.
Of course.
And just have, equal access. So when I first went out, I took anybody. Anybody who wanted to come in, I took them on. And that was not the best way to go. Okay. Professionally and business-wise as well. But professionally, as a psychologist, I have specialty areas. I have areas where I know how to work with trauma, depression, anxiety, suicidality, children, adolescents, and adults. I do psychological evaluations. I'm not so great at psychotic disorders or forensic stuff. I just didn't get that training. I also don't do evaluations for autism, which is a big thing that people are looking for these days. So you have to be very careful about not just like being so open to take anybody because we have our specialty areas. But at the time, I'm freaking out, right? And my wife's like, you got to make some money. I can't hold us together, for long. So I was just taking anybody, and eventually I learned I could only actually take about 5 to 7 Medicaid clients in order to be able to pay my bills.
Yeah.
My business bills as well as my personal bills.
Right.
I have big loans that I have to pay back. So that's another downfall of going the route that I went. I was taking anybody, but eventually I kind of looked at it. I was like, okay, how many people do I have on this insurance, this insurance, this insurance? What are they paying me? What do I want to be making every month? What do I need to be making every month? And I've adjusted it. So I've been on my own for 4.5 years. And I am finally now coming to a place where I feel like I am shaping the business the way I want it to be, which is great.
We talk about that a lot in business with our clients at Shovel the Sidewalk, and when it comes to marketing. And we go through this ourselves as a business. We're in the process of going through it. Is what is our value proposition? What is it that we're bringing to the table? Because we can provide all these different services to all these people, and you become nothing. You can't be the king of everything.
No.
And so you find that niche where, one, you enjoy it, you're good at it, and it's extremely valuable to your clients, and you're helping them. Right. And I feel like that's where you're getting to. So you're discovering your niche, and you're going for that niche. Right. Can you explain that niche? Explain it to us, exactly what it is, the services that you're providing to people.
So this year I decided therapy is a lot of hard work. It's a lot of holding emotion, and it can be really draining. So in our work, it's super important for us to do adequate self-care, taking days off, making sure we're taking care of ourselves. So, but also part of my self-care in my professional role was I do psychological evaluations. As a psychologist, psychologists are the only folks who can really do psychological evaluations, and that's where we're doing testing and evaluation. So a big one for me is I have a lot of children and adolescents who are coming and saying, the parents are calling and saying, my child's struggling in school, we're not sure if they have a learning disorder or if it's ADHD, or they're a little anxious too, that might be playing a part. So I have tests that I give to the kids, and I do some observations with them, and I do a good clinical interview with the parent. And with the results, I compile it into a report, and we put kind of the puzzle pieces together, and we have a diagnosis, and I have recommendations for them. That is not as draining as therapy because I have an endpoint, and I can give them an answer, and we can move forward. So it feels really good. So this year I decided I wanted to split my business, half therapy, half psychological evaluations. And I have been able to do that. I was a little worried about what that would look like for my revenue, but it ended up, I think it's looking like I'm making more money this year. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. I mean, so in the end, because one of the things we talked about off air was integrated? Is that what it is? What's integrated? Is that what you do?
So there are other words that can describe it as eclectic or integrative psychotherapy. And what that means is that in school we learn a lot of different theories. So cognitive behavioral therapy is a big one I use. There's dialectical behavioral therapy. There's psychoanalysis, which is what you think of when you think of the old school psychologist laying on the couch and doctors just like
What's
analyze.
That one called?
Psychoanalysis.
Yeah.
And that's not very big these days. And actually that's, I think, driven by the insurance companies that want like evidence-based treatment. They want you know, they'll give you a certain amount of sessions and expect the person to be cured, which is
not realistic.
Yeah, it's not realistic. Yeah. But so there's all these different theories, and I say that I'm integrative because I do kind of combine. I do a little psychodynamic, and when I say psychodynamic, I mean I like to get a good history, especially when I'm working with adults. What was your childhood like? What was growing up like? Where were some traumatic experiences that you had? Because a lot of times those things we carry with us and they get stuck. And if we can work through them now, and if we can work with them with a child too, then they won't carry it with them as long. But as an adult, I say psychodynamic because psychodynamic is we're looking at the past and bringing that up to the future or up to the present and working through that so that you can move on, and giving you some tools to help when maybe you're feeling super anxious or you're getting into a depressive episode. How do we get you out of that? Because sometimes that old stuff comes back. So psychodynamic and cognitive behavioral therapy are tools that I use. I use a lot of mindfulness. And I do some trauma work with children and adults too.
So I'm going to answer this for you. I'm guessing the negative part of what you're doing is dealing with the insurance situation. That's not fun. The
right.
positive must be the gratification.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Yes. Yeah. And you never know when you're going to get that. But with the evaluations, I feel like I get that a lot more, just because they're coming to me with questions that I can typically answer, or at least give them a pathway forward.
Gotcha. Okay. So, what about the misconception, or we think of going to a psychologist. It's like, oh, it's embarrassing. It's
stigmatized.
Thank you. Yeah. Stigmatization, and then we'll get into mental health and all that. But right. So I feel like there's been a lot of progress. Maybe because I'm much more aware of it because of your profession, and we'll get into your personal situation, what happened with Justin. But what? So is it easing? Is it becoming more? I don't know what the word is. More accepted to do this now.
I think so, and I have some parents that are calling me. I had a client parent call me, and she said, "Well, me and my husband and our son are in therapy, and my daughter wants to be in therapy." And she's like, "I don't think you need to be in therapy. I think you're doing okay." Well, no, Mom, I have some worries. So the mom's like, "I want her to be in therapy," and so. I feel like there is more acceptance. We in Washington, I get calls all the time. Me and several other therapists in the area. I say therapists because we're not all psychologists. We're full, and so and it's heartbreaking because we have these folks that we cannot help, and it's I've talked to some legislators too because they're like, what do we do? And I'm like, at some point I cannot take everybody, right? Like we were talking about. But so I feel like it's more accepting, it's more accepted, and people are seeking it more. There's not as much of a stigma. I won't say the stigma's gone though.
Right.
And I think in certain families, it's still there.
But I also think that things become more accepted, just like in marketing, because Jane Doe went and was like, that was awesome.
Yeah. Right.
And then tell somebody else, and over time it becomes much more accepted. So let's talk about mental health. And it's just interesting the business and the field that you're in, and the personal situation. 10 years ago, so you lose your brother to suicide. It's never easy, and we're coming up on his birthday.
Right.
I know for me, I'm not in your profession, but I was clueless about mental health.
Sure.
Still, obviously, I don't know. I'm much more aware of it and much more understanding, because I remember when we lost Justin, I watched you and I watched Sharice and your mom and your dad, and I know the pain never goes away. But I was just really angry at him. But then I think about it, as time went on, what I realized is, if Justin had cancer, would we be angry at Justin? Right?
Yeah.
So talk about that. There's two angles for you. Obviously a personal angle. I don't know where I'm going with this, but there's the personal angle and the professional angle. I guess I'm making a statement and looking for you to jump on it. I think the stigma of the survivors, it's something where I appreciate is that you guys are willing to talk about it.
Yes, right. I think it's
important. How important is that for survivors?
I think it's very important to talk about it, or at least to have somebody to talk to about it. And there's a lot of shame, and that, I'll be honest, when I was actually at a trauma conference in Atlanta when I got the phone call from my dad. I was in front of a bunch of people on the phone, like in shock, freaking out. And somebody came up and helped me and got me into a room and got the people I was there with to come sit with me and help me figure out, because now I have to change my flight. I was supposed to leave later that day to go back to San Francisco where I was living. I had to switch it to Buffalo, and I couldn't do that by myself. I was embarrassed. And I feel bad that I was embarrassed, because there's really nothing to be embarrassed about. But I was so embarrassed that here I am. I'm training to be a psychologist. My brother had just come out in August to be with Wendy and I, just to get a break. We had gotten him set up with a psychologist and a psychiatrist. And so he had been, I don't know if he had started mental health services before he came to visit or right after. But I know checking in with him, he was like, yeah, it's good. Things are feeling a little bit better, a little bit more doable. So like, here I am in this field. I felt like I talked to him, we were on the same page, and I told him, if you're ever in this spot, you call me. And he and I were super close. He didn't call. And I was mad, but I was embarrassed that, how did I not see this? How did I not stop this? So I felt super responsible for a long time. I mean, logically, I knew it wasn't my fault. There's nothing I can do, but it was embarrassing. And in fact, Wendy reminds me, she's like, I called and you wouldn't talk to me. I couldn't talk to her. And I told her, I said, I was ashamed. What were you going to think of me? What were you going to think of my family? Like, it felt really vulnerable. Like, this happened to my family. And so that was a lot that I had to work through. But what I would say is that I'm not ashamed now. I know all of us did the best that we could, to help him. And when somebody's in that space, and it's not, I want to say this too, somebody who commits suicide isn't always dealing with depression. They're not always have a mental illness. There's lots of different reasons people end their life. So I just want to say that. But for this situation, Justin did struggle a lot with depression. He may have even had bipolar, I'm not sure. Bipolar is where there's the mania and the depression, so there's different episodes. He was a risky guy. He would ride his motorcycle and pop wheelies, and a lot of times we'll see that with mania. There's a lot of risk-taking behaviors, not sleeping very well, having lots of energy, just not thinking through, being super distracted, and kind of euphoric, like, oh, everything's great, like on top of the world, and then you sink. And I feel like I experienced that with my brother sometimes. I don't know if you did. Yeah,
when I think about it, I haven't thought of that until now. But
yeah, and so I don't know, like, of course, then part of the process of having, when you lose somebody by suicide is that you're trying to blame somebody, right? You don't want to, it's a whole process. And I'm like, well, maybe the psychologist got it wrong. Maybe he was on the wrong meds and it sent him over the edge. And I wanted all those answers, but in the end, it doesn't make a difference. And as a psychologist too, I know that I can't save anybody. I can just do my best to help them and to give them the tools and to let them know I am there, give them the crisis lines, because I can't always be there. Help them do a safety plan of the people they can call, the things they can do to keep themselves safe. But I can't save anybody. None of us can. And I think that's important to know. When somebody has made that decision.
So what do you say, through your experience and your profession, to a family who has a family member who maybe they attempted in the past? There's a situation here. They know that this is not good. And you say, well, that person has to save themselves, which is difficult when you're in that dark space. Nobody plans on committing suicide. It's just, it's like in Justin's situation. He didn't want to hurt everybody.
No,
he didn't know what he was doing. It's when you're sick and you die.
Right.
But is there a potential? Are we learning enough that you can identify a situation and actually stop this from happening? Or ultimately, is it going to happen? If it doesn't happen now, it's going to happen a year from now, 10 years from now, or 20 years from now.
Right.
Which is it?
Yeah.
What can people do? What can
right.
families learn from what you guys went through?
So I'll take a professional stance for this. When I'm working with, so especially my teenagers, I'm always very worried if they are cutting or they're feeling suicidal, and anytime that's coming up, I'm saying, okay, so are you wanting to die right now? Do you have a plan? And we talk it through. Now they could be honest with me, but they might not. And I have to know that. If I'm sensing in the room, they may not be being honest, I'm gonna say, I'm gonna have to bring mom and dad in, or your parents in. And we're gonna have to do some safety planning. If some of my clients I've had, they said, no, I don't think I can keep myself safe. I said, we have to go to the hospital then. That's not the best option always, but if they are telling me they can't keep themselves safe, we need them to have that extra support. So maybe we need a med adjustment. So they might have to go to the hospital, spend a few nights, get a med adjustment, get some other tools in place. They might have to go into a more intensive program where they're getting therapy every day, and they're just focusing in on that to get some better coping skills. And maybe the parents are going to some therapy too, so that they're getting the tools of like, how do I help my child? How do I make sure that I'm looking out for all the signs I'm looking out for, that I'm making sure that the house is safe, that I'm checking in on them. What are some things that I shouldn't be saying, right? Especially to the teenagers. Because in the heat of the moment, I mean, parents are scared, and sometimes that comes off as anger, right? And you say the wrong thing, but you're scared. So getting the parents the support, and sometimes I'll sit with the parents and say, okay, so these are the things you need to know, these are the things you need to provide, and they might be sharing with me how they're feeling, and I said, okay, I understand, you're scared, you need to be really careful about how you talk to your child, to your teenager. Now, what I will also say too is, you asked, if there was an attempt. So what we know is that is a predictive factor for future attempts and possibly a future suicide completion.
So you can, all right, child is 16, 17, parents. What about like in Justin's? Was he 27, 28?
So his
38. So it was
his first attempt was 16.
I know he was 16.
Yeah.
What about the child that's
an adult.
A child but an adult in their 20s lives on their? What about they're married? They have kids. I mean, Justin didn't.
Right.
But he lived on his own. He was in his late 20s.
Right.
He was
Right.
Playing baseball.
Right.
Doing working. So and also depressed at the same time. But what about that situation? How can a family help? The child isn't living under the roof.
Right.
Although sometimes when they're married, I mean,
right.
that happens too. That just happened with someone from Sharice's school. His husband, that was bad. But I mean, how do you? And now she's going through the whole. Thinking, you recognize things later.
Right.
So what are preventative measures, or are there any, for people that are not living at home with their parents?
Right.
What do you do?
So, I mean, like with Justin, I talked to him, and I tried to encourage him to go get help. I talked about the benefits. I tried to let him know he wasn't alone. And so I think, staying connected when somebody is going through something like that, staying connected to them, even if it's like we're doing a text message check-in every day, or I'm coming over if I don't hear from you, and having a plan. Like if you are in that dark space, come over to my house, right? Just hang. You can hang here for however, if you need to spend a couple nights. I think close to maybe a few weeks or a month before he did end his life, I think he had actually written a note. He had left it at my dad's house. He called me and he told me, and he was home alone. And I said, you need to go back to Dad's. I said, did you give Dad the note? No, I just set it there and I left it for him to read. I said, Justin, you can't be alone tonight. And I was on the phone with him. I'm in California. And I don't know that he was going to call my dad. So after I hung up with him, I think I called my dad and I told him, Justin left you a note. We need to make sure he's okay. And I think my brother did go and spend the night at my dad's. I don't know how long, but he stayed there. I think he was feeling really alone in the house by himself. So
it prevented it. It could have happened that night, right?
It could have happened.
So extended another month. But how do you? Is this? I guess every situation is different because everyone's. You know, I mean, we all have not just mental issues, but physical issues, and the body reacts differently for every person. But is suicide preventable? I guess that's the question. Is it preventable?
I think it is. I think it is, and I think it is individual too. I think it's preventable because I think that I've prevented some in my work, and I say that I don't say that to be narcissistic at all. Because I can't save anybody, and I recognize that. But I have had clients come to me and say, "You helped me." In fact, I just had a client that's off to college this year. She said, I didn't see myself going to college. I didn't think I was going to make it through my teenage years. Thank you for the help that you provided. I know it wasn't just me. Right. It was my client. It was the strengths that she had. It was the support that she got. It was because she kept coming to therapy and doing the work. It's not just about in therapy. It's the work you do outside of therapy. So the more we talk about it, I think the better. I think the less stigma, right? When we let people know you can talk about this stuff. It's okay. Everybody has thought, oh gosh, maybe it would be better if I just didn't wake up tomorrow, right? We've all had a little moment where it wasn't like serious. It was like, gosh, I just wish it would just end, right? Whatever pain we're going through. So I think everybody can relate to that feeling of it's just too much. But if it's to the point of I really can't go on, seek medical help, seek psychological help. Medication is not the only answer. I think, the best is medication and therapy because the medication is kind of like a Band-Aid. It helps you get over the hump, but you need those tools. You need to know that people care. You need to know that people understand. And if you meet with a therapist and it doesn't click or you feel like they don't get you, or you can't relate to them, or you feel like you're being judged, find another one. Don't stick with that one. Because I tell my clients all the time, I might not be the best fit for you. And don't worry about my feelings. It's okay. Like I'm here to help you. And if me helping you is helping you find somebody who's a better fit, let's do that. It's okay. You just let me know. Because one of the biggest things in therapy is the relationship. You have to know that you can go into that room and you can trust that person and you can say anything. You won't be judged and you will be given the tools that you need. And sometimes I've had to say to clients, you know what? This is an area that I don't have enough training in. I don't think I am going to be the best. And they might say, no, I still want to work with you. And I say, I appreciate that and I want to work with you too, but we need to find somebody who can work with you on this issue because I don't have the tools. And then once you work on that issue, so one example is substance abuse. I don't have a lot of training in that. I don't have enough tools to help my clients. And if there are substance abuse issues, a lot of times that coincides with suicide, that needs to be addressed first. Because if you're using and we're doing therapy, you're not going to get what you need to get from therapy.
So when I also feel you mentioned we need to talk about it more.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe, I don't have any statistics, but loved ones are recognizing it more. And instead of, I'm sure they still are, like, let's pretend it's not there. But I feel like maybe they're seeking help.
Right.
For the one that's sick. More than they used to. Right.
Yeah.
So that's saving lives right there.
So are you talking about the loved ones around the person who's
sick,
coping with the mental illness, getting support?
Yeah, getting help.
Yes. And so there's a group called NAMI, National Association for Mental Illness, I believe, and they provide support groups for family members and loved ones. And a lot of times I'll share that resource with families because they're like, I don't know what to do. And I said, you need support too, because you're at your end and you don't know what to do, and you need to have that support and get more resources too on how you can better help yourself so you can help your loved one. Because if our resources are tapped, we can't help another person.
Right. So, all right. So there's helping people. We're trying to help them from taking that step, the ultimate step of suicide. But then I think you can help people now whose loved one lost the battle, like Justin. Unfortunately, you're not going to stop them, like you said. It's ultimately that person's decision, right? Whether they control that decision or not. And then it's a lot of times, like in Justin's situation, he just doesn't control it. He's sick.
Right.
But anyway, you lost him. And it's been 10 years.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of families that lost somebody a month ago. There's suicide every single day.
Every day, yeah.
How have, I just talked to your dad about it a couple weeks ago, and he's like, it sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks. It's not like it's, but does time help? How does time help? The pain's always going to be there, but how does time help? Give hope to those that are going through, because I've seen you guys get better over time. Yeah. I've seen it. I've watched it.
Right.
I'm part of that. So I know that over time, but I don't know why over time. I have no idea, but I know for those, I've been in those groups. We went to those sessions after we lost Justin for like a year, and these people are like, I remember this husband and wife, and their son was 17. He had committed suicide like a couple weeks ago. I was just like, oh my God, the pain that they're in and what they're going to be going through.
Right.
But over time, right?
Yeah.
How is it that you guys have been able to, I don't know, keep it together, function, move forward? Because at the beginning,
it was rough. It was really rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I can speak to my journey. So for me, I had a big sense of responsibility. I kind of always had that as a child growing up, being the oldest anyway, and then being in the field and not being able to save him. So I immediately went to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, AFSP. They provide survivor groups, and I'm sure they have them all over. I was in San Francisco. I attended that group. I think it was like an 8-week group, and that was helpful. I also jumped right back into my own therapy to work through that. But the time, I mean, as time passes, you're used to not having him around, but you also can think of the happy memories. I mean, every November is pretty difficult still, but this year for me it's a little bit easier because I actually had to do some extra work this last year around the trauma of losing him. Because I would just get these episodes where all of a sudden a memory came and I was like, the rest of the day was done. I was in this really dark place and crying and feeling hopeless. And so I decided to do some specific trauma work around that. In therapy, for me, therapy works. I believe in it, obviously. And the therapy that I did was called it's EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. It's a specific therapy for trauma processing and moving past it. And since then, I feel like things have cleared emotionally for me. And I think, the time too, we're building new memories. Like this year, I wanted to be home since it was 10 years. To me, that's a big deal. And I know you guys always go out to dinner on his birthday. And I always recognize his birthday in my own way, wherever I am. But I wanted to be here with you all to celebrate his birthday with you. And to tell stories maybe of him and have your girls know Justin like we knew Justin. And so it's like, you know, you build new memories, and I stay connected to him just through, sometimes I, you know, talk to him a little bit, or dreams are a big thing. I have some really amazing dreams where he shows up. But yeah, for me, it was therapy and connecting with others. And also in my work, when I'm able to work with a teenager, although it's hard when they're sitting there and feeling suicidal, it's hard for me not to think about my brother and what happened. But that experience has helped me, I think, be a better psychologist, because I just have a different insight. And I can help, like I've had several Sharice's friends or friends of friends call me and like, I know somebody who's going through this, what can I do to help? And I feel like, oh wow, I know where to go, like I kind of can help. And so I can help other people in the honor of my brother. The Out of Darkness Walk is another way if people want to go and be with a community. I did that that first year. It was great. I had friends that showed up for me. That was super helpful. So if you are friends of people who have lost somebody, know that you can always check in. And if the person doesn't want to talk about it, they don't want to talk about it, and that's okay. Everybody's different. I'm very open. I always want to talk about it. So, and I really appreciate stories. So anytime people can share stories with me, I don't care what time of year it is. It doesn't always have to be around the anniversary. It's probably better when it's not. Just to know, like, oh, I remember when Justin did this, because I definitely don't know all the stories. And it just keeps his memory alive.
When we used to do commercials with your dad, Justin was, it's more a story about your dad, but so we do Budway's, and we try to do authentic story time, which is what we do. And your dad would come in, and I'm like, he's the grocer Frank Budway. He's not. You're not, you know, Wegmans is fantastic, and Tops. You're not them. You're grocer Frank Budway. So I don't want any scripts. I just want you to talk. And you're like, all right. And then Justin would be there to coach me, like, Dad, you got this. Your dad like this. And then the mic would turn on, and your dad would be like, all right. And Justin would say, Dad, that's perfect. Let's just. I'd ask your dad a question, and you go, at Budway's, and then your brother would come in. That's not a go. And I remember it was Tom Green. Was that the Green Thumb? Yeah.
And
your dad wanted.
Oh gosh.
And Justin was like, "No, you're not going Green Thumb." So we'll wrap up here in a second.
Okay.
I learned yesterday that your grandma was named after a dog. So what?
Gosh. No, she wasn't named after a dog. Okay. Her name was Anna.
Okay.
But as kids, because we never had dogs, we didn't have pets until we were older. But as little ones, the way we differentiated our grandparents was by their dogs' names, I guess.
That's a little weird.
It's super weird. We are really weird and very strange people. So do you want me to say the name?
Go ahead, yeah.
So my mom's mom and her dad were called Grandma and Grandpa Punky because they had the dog Punky. And my dad's mom and his stepdad, so our...
Flora?
Flora, yeah.
Well, that's her name.
No.
You called her Grandma Flora?
No.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
I didn't know that either. What'd you call her?
Grandma and Grandpa Asia, because they had a dog named Asia.
Whose idea was this?
I have no idea. Probably not. Maybe it was ours. I don't know.
All right. So she wasn't named after a dog?
No.
I thought it was just on your mom's side.
No.
So
no, that's how we differentiated. Thing. Yeah. Which grandma? We're going Grandma Punkies.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing. Hopefully it helps people out there and they can learn about your profession. Maybe it's a profession someone else wants to get into.
Yeah.
And also, thanks for your thoughts on suicide and hopefully in dealing with it, and hopefully it helps somebody out there. So
I sure hope so.
All right. You can watch any of our episodes of Sidewalk Talk. They're all up on YouTube. You can download them on your favorite app, or on iTunes, or what else are we on? Spotify. Whatever your favorite app is, you can do it. Thanks to our director of sound and video, Jamie Catania. He is the best in the business. Thanks to our sponsor, Vandelay Industries, George and his team, we couldn't do this without you. So thanks for watching and listening to Sidewalk Talk. Until next time.
Thank you.